recording this computer. Okay. So we're holding the Friday section of Chumash. I think we're going to continue with the fascinating story of Bilam. So we already have, again, we have the Moabites, the king of Moab, Balak, who's neighboring to where the Jews live now, wants to get rid of them. And he hires a prophet who was an anti-Semite. Interesting, it was a Gentile anti-Semite prophet who Hashem gave prophecy to. And he is now hired by the king Balak to curse the Jewish people and hopefully to get rid of him in that way. And the story continues in today's Chumash. So he already tried twice. Now he's going to try his third time. The king Balak is going to try and get Bilam to curse the Jewish people. So that's where our story continues. Vayomer Balak el Bilam. So Balak, King Balak of Moab, says to the prophet Bilam, please come with me, and I will take you, where's going to be the third place, to another place. So here you have the king Balak who is leading Bilam around, and he's trying to find locations which maybe there's some chance that it might work to curse the Jewish people. So come and please, as Rashi says, last time he was commanding him, you better curse them for him. He was really, seems like angry at him. Here he's saying, please, maybe somehow we'll be able to find a way at this new location where I'm going to bring you to, and maybe it'll be by some chance you'll be successful in cursing the Jewish people. Ulai Yishar be'enei halikim, maybe it will be pleasant and correct in Hashem's eyes. And you'll be able to curse me from there. So we're going to go for the third pitch. We're going to go for the third try and see what happens if he will be successful. Vayikach Balak as Bilam. So where Balak takes Bilam, where does he take him? He takes him to Roish HaPa'or, the peak of the Pa'or. So it seems like it's another mountain. And Pa'or is going to be a name of a idol, which, remember last time the Jews also, Balak took Bilam also to a place of, had a name of I think it was Baal, was another name of an idol. Here he takes him again to the head of this idol called Pa'or, this maybe high mountain or something where they had Pa'or, and you can see it was high up. Hanishkoif, this peak was overlooking Al Pnei HaYishimayin, overlooking the wastelands. So I guess it was high up and you could see all the way down and so on. Now, Rashi tells us, like he told us last time, yes, it is Chumash, that although I guess Bilam was the guy hired, the prophet, this guy Balak was a sorcerer of his own, in a sense, greater than Bilam even. How do we see that he was a greater sorcerer than Bilam? He says because Balak knows where to go. He can see things that Bilam doesn't see, and he sees on this mountain of Pa'or something's there that is going to bring a terrible calamity to the Jewish people. Now, he doesn't know exactly what that means. And Rashi says that is the skill of the people who know how to read the stars and could predict, the stargazers and could predict, people who predict things know there's something there, but they don't know how to translate it. Now, he's right, because the Jewish people soon, shortly after, are going to sin terribly with the Pa'or idol, like you'll see soon. And Jews will die. It's going to be a terrible situation, like we're going to see in a little bit. And he senses something at this location, and therefore he takes the prophet Bilam to this location. So Rashi points out interesting that in a sense Balak had a skill that even Bilam didn't have. So he takes him to Rosh HaPa'or, to the peak of Pa'or, that's looking over the wasteland, a high up location, middle of the class. We talk later. It's important for now. Okay, I don't know what that is. You'll tell me after. Okay, cool. Vayomer Bilam el Balak. So the prophet Bilam says to King Balak, again, Bnei li v'zeh shiva mizbachos, build me another 7 altars, hachin li b'zeh shiva parim, and prepare 7 bulls, shiva elim, and 7 rams. Vayas Balak, and Balak did kasher Amar Bilam, like Bilam says, Vayal, and he brought up Por v'ayil, bull and the rams, b'mizbeach, on the altar. So he's going for his third and his final try to see if he can curse the Jewish people. Now, what happens here is, it's interesting that he prepared, because he gives up right away. He doesn't even try. He already knows that Hashem obviously doesn't want to curse the Jewish people from his past experience. But Yar Bilam, and Bilam saw, and he says, like, I don't even need to check anymore. I know already. I'm not going to try and see if Hashem wants to curse them. It's not an option. It's not happening. Yar Bilam ki toiv be'enei Hashem. Bilam, Prophet Bilam says, these people are blessed and they're good in the eyes of Hashem. Kitev, I don't need to check. I know that they're blessed. Levarech es Yisrael, to bless the Jewish people. And he didn't go kifam befam as he did every other time, the last two times, to go and see maybe somehow he could get Hashem to agree to a curse. He knows already what Hashem wants. The kras nechashim, to go, it's called lenachesh, to divinate, and maybe Hashem will come on him, and maybe by some chance that Hashem will curse them. And he said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's no point of him going and trying to kind of have this conversation with God. So what he did was, he went and he faced the desert. Now, why is he facing the desert? I guess that's towards the area of the south, it seems to me, like towards the area of Mount Sinai, because what took place in that big desert, not north, but south, what took place over there? And what happened over there was a terrible thing. That's where the Jews sinned with the golden calf. So he has a different plan. He's taking on a different ploy. Instead of trying to see if perhaps Hashem wants to curse the Jewish people, which Hashem doesn't want to, he's going to meditate and internalize and connect with the worst sin that the Jewish did. It's a good idea. Let's bring up a horrible thing that the Jews did. Let's mention it. Let's talk about it, and maybe we can make Hashem angry. So right now, Hashem is not angry. So his next ploy is to kind of focus on that. So he faced the desert. What does that mean? Rashi says he's not trying to find out if God's angry because God isn't. He's going to make God angry. How? But let's talk about the terrible sin that the Jews did when Hashem actually got angry at the Jewish people. I guess maybe he can make Hashem angry. So verse 2, Vayisa Bilam Eseinav, Bilam lifts his eyes as he's looking over the desert and wants to curse the Jews, and he sees a spectacular appearance. Vayar, he looks, and now, first of all, Rashi says he looked at the Jews actually intentionally. He wanted to give them what we call an evil eye, right? Everyone, it's famous, the evil eye, an ayin hara, an evil eye. So again, that idea, maybe think about the idol and think about these people are idol worshippers and they did the golden calf and create an evil eye. Rashi says, we sum up from here already about the character of this person. We see who Bilam was, and he sums up all three things. He says, number one, we see he has a character of an evil eye. He's the kind of person that looks at people in a bad eye. Like I guess you could look at people in a good eye, look at people in a bad eye. He's the skill set that you look at a person and see the negative things inside the person. Another thing which we said before, is Ruach Gavoya. We mentioned already that he's very haughty spirit. He's a big ego. He tells people it's not honorable enough people. Like, you need to send me more honorable people to call me. He's like a big shot, like a big schwitzer, a very egoistic person. And the third thing is Nefesh Chava. He was a guy who wanted a lot of money, because remember he said, even if you give me a house full of gold and silver. So Rashi says we're already seeing in this guy's character three things about this prophet, this terrible person. Number one, he's a person who sees people in the bad eye. Number two, he is a terribly egoistic person. And number three, he's also a very lustful person who wants everybody's gold and silver. Okay, so anyway, continue right along. So he goes into giving an evil eye. What's relevant to our verse here is that he's causing an evil eye, and that you're trying to cause an evil eye on the people, and he looks at them to cause the evil eye, and he sees a spectacular image. Vayaris Yisrael, he sees the Jewish people, Shoichen Lishvatav, living and dwelling the way they camped according to their tribes. And Rashi explains, what does that mean? What did he see? He sees that everybody was living. The next point is easier to explain. I'm trying to think what this means. But Rashi says one of the famous things is that the way they pitched their tents, right? They had to settle somewhere. They all moved in and they pitched their tents. Every single person identically pitched their tents in a similar way. He saw this fascinating thing. He looks at the Jewish people and he sees that everyone's door was not facing anyone else's door. So when they set their tents up, they did not have two doors facing each other, because what's going to happen when the husband and the wife or the kids or the family are walking in and out? You're going to see inside the other person's tent. So in order to leave respect and leave modesty, that people should live, the Torah is very, very into modesty. That's like one of the biggest things. You want Hashem to rest on you, you have to have modesty. It's not, you have to know, I guess, what's yours and not be sticking your nose and your face into other people's business. Like husband and wife, they have to keep separation on their own. They shouldn't be looking or hearing, in Judaism, we don't hear other women singing, and we don't look at women who are dressed in a certain way. Same thing goes for men, not dressing in an unmodest way. All these things are a uniqueness and holiness of the Jewish people. So here he wants to do what? He wants to cause an evil eye, but he's looking at these people that are unbelievable, that they're holy people who are living a life of dignity. They each live in their own home. They don't look into the other person. They don't look where they're not supposed to look. They're not invading other people's space. They recognize and that beauty. And even the whole tribes as a whole, each tribe is on their own. They're comfortable where they are. They're not looking to stick their nose in other people's business, and they're not intermingling in an unhealthy way. They're very modest people. It's an interesting thing, which is a recipe for godliness and holiness. So that's what he sees. And it comes on his heart. He wants to do the even eye, and he flip-flops. He does a 360, a 180. He does a 180 because now he wants to bless them. God's spirit comes in him, and here he is ready to bless them, right? So he didn't go meditate. He didn't go try to get Hashem to anger them. He just tried to make an evil eye, tried to identify these people with the golden calf, and boom, he looks at them and he sees this unbelievable, prestigious nation that are living in holiness and modesty. And he's like, wow, I got to bless them. And God's spirit comes in and he has to bless them. And he begins his parable, as he used to speak in these metaphors and parables. And he says, answer the phone. I can't talk now. Bilam, but move away, please, a little bit so I can learn. Bilam, he says, I declare, so declares Bilam. Are you okay? I'm in the middle of a class. Okay, when I'm done, but I can't. I'm in the middle of teaching now. Tell him I'm teaching now. Bilam declare. By the way, for those who don't realize, I'm mommy too today. My wife's in Atlanta, so I have the kids with me. That's what's going on over here. Bilam. So declares Bilam, Beno Ba'ar, who is the son of Be'ar. So Bilam, the son of Ba'ar. Rashi just says something that these two people, Bilam, the characters in our story, the king Balak and this prophet Bilam, they were greater than their father. A lot of times the father is greater and the son is more or less, but these two people were greater than their parents. Their parents were like their kids, and relative to their success and talent is that Bilam was double the prophet of his father. So Bilam, B'nai Be'ar, Bilam, who is the son of Ba'ar, but it's like Ba'ar was his son, like his father, he was really much greater, like a father to him in his power prophecy. And so says Bilam, the son of Ba'ar, and so says the man with the open eye. Here's a very interesting Rashi here, which I kind of mentioned, I think, in the other day. So what does it mean he had an open eye? And so I believe Rashi says, some commentaries say that this prophet had a blind eye, or it was actually missing from its socket. He was missing an eyeball, interestingly, from its socket. And how did it take place? How did this take place? And he says very interesting. He says, we learned in the prophecy that he said, in the first, one of the earlier prophecies that he said about the Jewish people, he said something very interesting. He said, God counts the numbers of the seed of Israel. Basically, that when a husband and wife and a Jewish man and woman are having intimacy in their relations, God is counting those seeds that the husband and wife are having relations together. And he's waiting for a drop. Which drop? He's waiting for the drop to come, which will be when a righteous person will be born. So Bilam looks and says, what is this? This is God is holy and he has the ministering angels of holiness. And here, God, you're telling me what God does. He sits and he looks and he counts at the intimate relations between husband and wife. And he's counting the seeds of these people for holiness. And he kind of like, he looked bad at it. He made fun. And he got, Hashem always punishes punishment for punishment. He looked at it with the wrong eye. So his punishment was that he lost his eye. Okay, so he ended up losing his eye. So that's how, interestingly, very interesting, he lost his eye. But to us, it just leaves us beautiful how Hashem literally, when a person has a child, It goes back to Tanya, which we were talking about the holiness of intimacy and so on. It's a very, very holy moment that Hashem is waiting for. When will that child be born? When will the tzaddik come, the holy special child, be born? All right, moving right along. So he's beginning his parable, he's beginning the blessing. So says, declares Bilam the son of Ba'ar, the man without the eye. Verse 4, Ne'um Shemeya Imreel, a declaration by the one who hears God saying, right, referring to himself. Asher Mechaze, that he sees, he has a vision. Shaddai, God of God, he sees a vision of God, and that name, by the way, of God means enough, that Hashem gives enough to all his creatures and creations. Hashem makes sure everyone has enough for the world what they need. So he sees the visions of this name of God, but it's another name of God called Shaddai. Yechzeh, he sees the visions from that name. Neufel, but when he has the vision, he falls down, Ugelu Yeinayim, with his eyes open. So Rashi says, what does it mean he falls down and he has a vision of God? So one interpretation is, as we've been learning in the past, simple, that God only appears to him when he's sleeping, because it's embarrassing to speak to this God, to appear to this anti-Semitic evil person is not really a good thing. So therefore, Neufel, when he falls down, when he lays down, and he goes to sleep. Another interpretation is that when this anti-Semite would prophesy, he always would fall down. His body would lose tremendous strength, become weak. He didn't know better to stand, and he fell down. What's the reason? Because he wasn't circumcised. So in an unholy state, to be standing with, I think even a sense is like with his circumcision open, without being circumcised in front of him, and God sitting there and talking, fall down, go down, so we shouldn't see that you're not circumcised, and then Hashem will speak to you. It's a fascinating interpretation. That's why Rashi says he would fall down. Verse 8, verse 5, and this is what we say in our prayers every morning before davening. Ma'toivu, and it comes from this, very interesting, it comes from this evil anti-Semite. Ma'toivu oyhalecha Yaakov. How great, here's his beautiful blessing, how great are the tents of Yaakov. How beautiful, how good are the tents of Yaakov. And Rashi says, because he saw how modest they were, that they set up their tents to give everyone their privacy and their space, not trying to see into each other's tents. Mishkanoisecha Yisrael, and the campments, the camping of, it's just unbelievably amazing. Looking at this camp of the Jewish people, the way that they camp, it's mind-boggling. It's beautiful, and this is the blessing that he's describing the people he wanted to curse. He's now saying, I'm not cursing you. This is the most beautiful way for people to live. I'm watching how you live. Rashi gives another interpretation of what does it mean, Mishkanoisecha Yisrael, your dwelling places. It's specifically referring to the Mishkan, to where Hashem dwells, and how lucky you are, not referring just to the way you're living now, but to the tabernacle, the Shiloh, the tabernacle that will stand for many years in Israel, in the place called Shiloh, Ubeis Elamim, and the Beis Hamikdash that will stand for many, many years in Jerusalem. How lucky these people are that they have a place, and what's so good about them is that they bring forgiveness to the Jewish people. They bring sacrifices. Look how lucky these people are about these two amazing dwelling places that will be in the city of Shiloh and that will be in Jerusalem, the temple. How lucky they are. And he says, and here's something interesting, actually. We keep on calling the tabernacle the Hebrew word Mishkan. But here's something very interesting. The Mishkan also in Hebrew, maybe more famously, the common Hebrew is called a mashkon. A mashkon means a collateral, a guarantee. Then in modern Hebrew today also, I think you could ask, you want to lend somebody money, you say, listen, give me collateral. What's the Hebrew word for that? The Hebrew word for collateral is mashkon. So Mishkan, these dwelling places are called mashkan, they're called a collateral. What's the connection? Why is our dwelling place called a mashkan? And he says, because the Mishkan is collateral. So what happens when the Jews sin? Hashem takes away the collateral. It keeps the collateral. What's the collateral? The temple. And that's a good thing. Why is that a good thing? Because instead of killing out the Jewish people, instead he collects the collateral and takes away the temple. So the temple was a safety. Instead of destroying the Yidden for the terrible sins that they were doing, Hashem collected the mashkan. And that's what Bilam is saying here, how great and beautiful the tents of Israel, this unbelievable place that it brings you forgiveness. And when you do so bad, you have collateral that Hashem collects instead of destroying the Jewish people. So I guess Bilam is saying, how am I going to curse these people? It's so beautiful and so blessed are these unbelievable people, is what's coming out of his mouth now. Verse 6, Vav. Kenechalim nitayu. they extend like streams. They are extending and going out. The meaning that the Jewish people are expanding. And here is an interesting Rashi. Rashi says something very interesting, that from the blessings we can tell what Bilam wanted to curse the Jewish people. In other words, Hashem didn't just put any blessings in his mouth. Hashem took the curses that he wanted to curse them and flipped them 180 and made them into a blessing. So because Hashem did that, if you look at the curses, you're able to see what is it that Hashem wanted to bless him. Because Hashem didn't just give any blessings. Hashem took his words, flipped it 180, and then ended up bringing into blessings. So Rashi says that from the details that you're going to see in the blessings he's giving, you can see what he wanted to curse them. And Rashi says what they are. What are the things that he wanted to curse the Jewish people? And he says here, I'll tell you what Rashi says they are. Here, I actually have quoted in the source. I'll just read you from the Gemara. I think he brings over here. I'll tell you what it is. He wanted to say that there should be no shuls and no synagogues. That's what he wanted to curse them. You shouldn't have any shuls or synagogues. But what did he say? How good are your tents, O Israel? He's referring to the shuls. So when he says how good the tents are, that's a 180 on the fact that he wanted to curse the Jewish people, that they should have no shuls. And that's what he wanted to do. Instead, he says how good your tents are, that you do have shuls. Then he continues. He wanted to say that the divine presence shouldn't rest in your midst. And that's why he says, Mishkan Eisecha Yisrael, how good are your dwelling and your encampment. So he wanted to say you shouldn't have any shuls or synagogues. And the blessing was you will have, how beautiful are your tents. And then he wanted to say, well, the divine presence shouldn't be among you. And he ended up saying, how beautiful are your camps, that Hashem does rest among the Jewish people. Then he wanted to say that the kingdom should not continue. The Jews should end after a certain amount of time. And that's where our verse comes in. Verse 6, they extended like streams, the opposite, that they're going to keep on going and going. And then the Gemara says, I just found interesting, he brings it from the Talmud, that the sage Rabbi Abba said, all these blessings ended up being reverted to curses. I guess maybe that in Deuteronomy, if you see in looking Chumash Devarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu will give the curses to the Jewish people if they sin, he brings the opposite. There's one thing that's not included in the curses, and that is that the shuls will always stay. The base medrash, the study halls, and the shuls will never include it in the curse. And those are things that are always going to stay among the Jewish people. So something very fascinating, something very interesting from that Gemara. Hold on one second. Yes. Mendel, is there something you could do? All right. Okay. Verse 6. Kinechalim nitayu. So the river, they'll be extended like streams. They're going to go out like streams. Keganois ali nahar. Like gardens. Oh, the phone died. Okay, it doesn't even work. Okay, go play. The phone's not working. Kaganois ali nahar. Like gardens, like by the river. Great, delicious gardens that are next to the river. Ka'oihalim. Like tents. Not to Hashem spread them out like tents. So two interpretations on this. One Rashi says is the Garden of Eden, the Gan Eden, the world to come, that Hashem is planting for these people. That Bilam is saying Hashem is planting the world to come for these people. And or another interpretation is, I guess, that Hashem lifted them up just like a canopy, like the sky covers the earth. Hashem lifted up the Jewish people. Bilam is saying that Hashem lifted these people up. Karazim ali moyim, like cedars by the water. So he looks at the Jewish people and says, these guys are like the sky that's covering the earth, or like the cedars that are planted by water, or like the river that's no end. These people are not to be cursed. Instead, the opposite is that they're spread out and lifted up above everything else. Verse 7, Zayin. Yizal mayim midolyoy. Water will flow from their well. So their well of water will flow from the well. Rashi says, what does that mean, water will flow from a well? And he says, it's the kingdoms, the kings were anointed by wells. So that means that they'll have great kings. Okay, so they're going to be great kings for the Jewish people. And they're going to be planted, their children, their seeds will be planted by many water, which is a tremendous blessing. They're going to be like great, successful plantings. When they have children, they'll be tremendously successful. The children will grow and be many because they will grow like seeds planted on good water and a lot of water. And the king shall be raised from Agog. So higher, the king will win over Agog. Who is Agog? Agog is referring to, he's the name of a king of Amalek, who is going to fight Agog, and that will be the first king of the Jewish people. That will be King Saul. So he's referring to the story that will come, predicting the future, that King Saul, the first king of the Jewish people, right? He starts with the verse saying there'll be great kings. Then he talks about the first king, and he says, Vayarim, that he will be lifted up. Who will be lifted up? King Saul, Agog, from the man whose name will be Agog, who will be the Amalekites who will try to destroy the Jewish people, who constantly tried to destroy the Jewish people, as we had already in the earlier parsha, and King Saul will destroy him. Bilam is prophesying. But Yaram Magog Malkoi, and he will win over, the king will win over Agog. V'tinase Malchusai, and his kingship will be exalted, will be tremendously successful. Now, what does that mean? It will be even greater, will be further exalted, which means that after King Saul will be two even greater kings. David HaMelech will be after King Saul, King David, and King Saul and Shlomo HaMelech, it's disturbing. And Shlomo HaMelech and King Solomon will be even greater. So following up on King Saul's kingdom, with the first king, two greater kingdoms will follow afterwards. Verse 8. El Maitziyai Mitzrayim. And why do these people have this greatness? Because God, it's all because of Hashem. We took them out of Egypt. That's the one who caused them this greatness. With unbelievable strength, unbelievable power and might and strength, Hashem took them out. We had this word in the earlier Rashi in a previous prophecy that he's saying, like lifting them up like the mightiest eagle who flies above everything, or like the demons that have tremendous strength. Yoichal goyim tzarav. The nations, he'll destroy his adversaries. The nations will destroy his adversaries, that the enemies of the Jews will be destroyed. But Meisayim Yagarim, and their bones will either be crushed or they'll be will be drenched, which means he'll suck out like the marrow for them, or the bones will become removed. The Chitzav Yimchatz, and he will dip his arrows in their blood. So different terms describing what will happen to the enemies of the Jewish people, Bilam is saying. Continuing right along. Verse number 10. Kara Shachav Kari. He will lie down and settle and crouch, which means the Jewish people will rest in safety in their land. Ka'ari, like a lion, Uchalavi, like a lioness, which means they're tremendously powerful and strengthened the land. Mia Kimenu, who's going to be able to rouse them, to wake them up, to stir them. Baruch, Baruch, whoever blesses them will be blessed. Whoever curses them will be cursed. And that is the end of the third prophecy that is given. So Balak comes really angry at Bilam. And he slammed his hands together. Balak tells Bilam, I called you to curse them, and you blessed them 3 times. Verse 11. He says, now run away from here, get out of here. To your place. I said I will honor you. And God has stopped you from being honored because you have to speak what he said. You're getting nothing. Yeah, you're not getting the honor. And Bilam in his defense tells King Balak, have I not already told even the messengers that you sent me? I said to them, verse 13, if King Balak will give me a male basic of a full house of gold and silver, I can't go against the word of Hashem, God's word. Lastly, to do good or bad. Believe you from my heart. Even the messengers you sent me originally, I told them to begin with that I can't do it. Whatever Hashem puts in my mouth, that's what I will speak. And Rashi points out interesting there that here he didn't say anymore, my God. I guess earlier he said, my God will tell me. He said God will say, because he realized that God was very angry at him already, that he lost his prophecy. So at this point, Hashem actually took away, it seems like, he banished him and he took away the prophecy that Bilam had. That's it. He was excommunicated from that prophecy. And that is the end, my friends, of today's Chumash. Any questions or comments on today's Chumash? We're going to have to finish Shvi'i